Hey, we're here in Duluth, Minnesota with John Cherry. And what was the name of your company, John?
Perpetua Resources.
Perpetual Resources. And we're here with Ryan and Better in Our Backyard. We're at their 5th annual dinner. I've said that a couple of times today as we're talking with different people, just looking to elevate what you guys are doing at Better in Our Backyard, looking to show people and bring into the light the things that they don't know that are going on. Ryan, you specifically requested that John sit down here and have a conversation because you thought he had some important things to say and some of the stuff matters. One of the things that you said earlier, which I think is really important, is you talked about how Better in Our Backyard wouldn't be here if not for people like you, John. That's a pretty big statement. And all afternoon we've been talking, and I've been hearing about Ryan and this association and how much it has grown over the past 5 years. And part of that, I think, is because the importance, the necessity, and the timing. But the other part of it is, like he said, it wouldn't exist if people didn't take a chance, didn't take a risk, and be willing to make an investment to help this be a thing. And so, Ryan, what are some of the questions here that you wanted to talk about with John? Why did you want him to be here on this podcast?
Well, the main concern was to talk about Stibnite. I mean, and also too, I think just with John's experience, I mean, he's been with companies like Resolution Copper, and he was vital in getting Eagle Mine permitted in Michigan. It's the U.S.'s only, nickel mine that's up and running right now. And
Wow.
He was the CEO of PolyMet PolyMet, actually, their NorthMet project is the first ever copper, nickel, or non-ferrous mine to be fully permitted in the state of Minnesota under his leadership. And now, in the last year with him running Perpetua and representing Stibnite, the U.S. Forest Service just approved their permit. And so it's just valuable to have him on.
Yeah. So, John, what can you tell us about that process and the project specifically that Ryan's talking about?
Sure. So the name of the company is Perpetua Resources. The project is the Stibnite Gold Project. I'm the CEO. I've been there since March.
Okay.
And it's a gold and antimony project. About 90% of the economics are driven by the gold, but there is a strategic critical mineral called antimony. This is the only antimony reserve in the United States, and it's used in military, a lot of military applications, but it's also used in fire retardants and stealth coatings, and it's used in a lot of things, night vision goggles. I could go on and on and
Wow.
on. But it's a very, very important mineral for a lot of different things, especially in the Department of Defense. So much so that the Department of Defense invested through a contractor, a grant, gave us $75 million to specifically permit the project and to do the basic engineering on the project, as well as design and operate a pilot plant specifically for antimony.
Wow.
So that tells you how important antimony is as a critical mineral. The other reason it's so critical is not only is this the only reserve of antimony in the United States, just recently China, let me back up, between China, Russia, and Tajikistan, they mine about 90% of the antimony worldwide. And 90% of what is mined is actually processed in China. China just recently...
90%?
90% is processed in China. Okay, and so China just recently announced an export ban on all antimony. So the world is now scrambling for...
How does that work?
The world is now scrambling for antimony. We're hearing rumblings about supply shortages already related to antimony.
Wow.
So, we're thrilled on our project because about a week or two ago, we got our final record of decision from the U.S. Forest Service, where the federal government authorizes our mine plan of operations to move forward so that we can go forward and build this project. There's a couple of state permits we got left to do. We're working on the overall project financing, which is another really great part of this project. We made an application to the U.S. Export-Import Bank, which has traditionally deployed capital. It's a bank of the U.S. government, and historically they've deployed capital overseas to help U.S. companies overseas with exporting and importing. There's a realization in our country now that we have offshored so many things for so many years, whether it's, critical minerals or, making refrigerators or TVs or chips or whatever it may be. There's now recognition we need to make a reinvestment in America. And the U.S. Ex-Im Bank, they not too long ago developed a new program called Made in America, and there's a sub-program in there called the China Transformational Export Program, where if it's made in America and it helps us compete better with China, those are the kind of projects they want to invest in. So this past April, we received a letter of interest from the U.S. Export-Import Bank for up to $1.8 billion to actually build our project. So it's
Wow.
all really coming together very well, very quickly. We're preparing to put a shovel in the ground as early as this summer to start on the project.
Are you serious? This summer, 2025?
Yep.
Wow.
The military they're in desperate need of antimony, and so we've told the military we can get them antimony by 2028. But in order to do that, we need to have a shovel in the ground this summer. Now, the good news is that the I's have been dotted, the T's have been crossed. There's been no shortcuts taken in the process. It's taken us 8 years to get to the end of the final record of decision. But the military has made it clear that, this being the only antimony mine in the country, and with the China export ban, they really need us to get up and going. Just by way of a little bit of history on the Stibnite project, the U.S. military actually mined this site for antimony and tungsten back during World War II and the Korean War, and produced 90% of those critical minerals for the war effort back then.
Wow. That's crazy.
And then also, too, to add to John's point on the DoD, is that this project alone can supplement annual DoD demands alone, right? I mean, is that still...
That's right. So the antimony that we'll produce from this project can supply about 35% of the overall U.S. demand. The military only needs about 10% of that. They need our high-grade antimony trisulfide, which is also there's some mines have antimony, usually antimony oxide. Very, very few have antimony trisulfide, which is what they're after. So we can supply 35% of U.S. demand, and the military would only need about 10% of that 35% for their needs, and we could supply that to them for decades.
Wow. I think the lack of awareness of things like this that people just don't understand, and also the reality that this is a long-term play. Like, it's neat to sit down with you. I've talked with all sorts of different people today at different stages of this process. It's really good for our country and for my backyard and yours that you are at the stage that you're at when China does something like this, that you're actually able to put a shovel in the ground in 2025. Like, the planning is in years, not months, and a matter of fact, the planning is in more than years. You just happen to be at this stage of it to be where we are.
Right. So permitting takes a long time in the U.S. The National Mining Association back in August put out a report where they noted on average it takes 29 years from discovery to put a mine into production in the United States, which is, in my view, embarrassing. It should not have to take that long to do that. In our case, we're coming to the end of the 8 years of permitting. We've demonstrated that we can do it right. We got the final record of decision. But the team at Perpetua has done such a good job of putting the company in a position to be ready to go and take advantage of an export ban in China or things happening like that. And part of that is kind of earning that social license. And I use the word earning very intentionally because you have to earn the trust of the community. And this goes back to the other projects I've worked on throughout my career. So I'm an environmental engineer by training. I've spent almost my entire career designing, permitting, and building mines in the United States. And, with Ryan and Better in our backyards here, there's the NIMBY attitude, not in my backyard. And so when I was with Polymet and we worked with Ryan and kind of had this idea to kind of get this up and going, it was a lot of people say not in my backyard. And the idea was it's better in my backyard where we can manage it and we can do it. And I've always thought that the people working on the project have a more vested interest in making sure that it is done right, because they're the ones that live there, recreate there, have their kids, they raise their children there, and it's their backyard. And who has a better interest to make sure that it's done correctly than the people where it is in their backyard? So, absolutely. I mean, that was kind of the genesis of this, and Ryan's just taken, this idea that we had, 5-6 years ago, whatever it was, and turned it into what you see here tonight with a dinner of over 500 people and supporters. It's just a great organization.
Yeah. Well, I definitely see that, and I've talked a lot about this tonight, just about how this is our backyard. And if you truly do care about the environment, you care about our planet, being part of this association is important because we are the ones investing in our backyards, which is the planet. So, Ryan, you were going to say something.
No, I have nothing. I mean, other than just, I'm just glad to have John here. And also too, even before John came on, what's funny about this is, he was one of our founding members, but then before John even joined Perpetua, one of his colleagues, Mackenzie Lyon, was the first mining company outside of Minnesota to join us. And now we have a couple of others. And then, seeing John now lead the helm at Perpetua, it's pretty full circle for us actually. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Back to your point, like we all like clean water. We all like clean air, right?
I'm drinking clean water right now. I'm very glad for it.
And some people say that mining, it's all about economics. And guess what? There's actually an economic incentive to do it right, because if you don't do it right, you'll get shut down and you'll never get to do another one again. So there's a lot of reasons to do it correctly. Economic is only one of them, but we're all environmentalists. We all drink the water. We all breathe the air. And I think a lot of times people think of mining as, that old prospector with his donkey and his pickaxe.
Yeah.
The technology today is light years ahead of where it was 150 years ago. The technology that we employ, everything from satellites and lasers to the modeling with supercomputers to the treatment technologies, where many times the mining industry now is having to capture water that falls out of the sky that has mercury concentrations in the 10 to 20 part per billion level and treat that down to 2 parts per billion. So you're capturing rainwater and having to treat it to make it cleaner before you can let it off of your property.
Wow. Yeah. I think that's one of the big things that a lot of people don't realize is if you want to go green, then bring it to our backyard so we can make sure that it's green. Better in our backyard is better in your backyard, better in my backyard, better planet all the way around. So, Ryan, I have to say, I'm so grateful that you've taken the initiative to start this. It's quite a big leap. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of investment, but it's so important and essential. And that's why people like you, John, are involved in this, because you see the importance of it. You care about the environment. You care about my family. You care about the United States of America and beyond our borders. And associations like Better in Our Backyard truly make a difference. And I believe that more of us should be involved and invested in what you're doing if we want to get it out there and show people what's going on and what responsible mining can look like.
Well, and to that point, look, we all use cell phones. We all drive cars. We like indoor plumbing and electricity. Those things have to come out of the ground. I play a game with the school kids all the way up through college. I've never been beat on it. Tell me something that you use on a daily basis that doesn't come out of the ground. It's either grown or it's mined. And that includes petroleum, right? It comes out of the ground. So if we want to live in today's society, these metals and minerals have to be mined. You can't recycle your way out of this. And so what that tells me is that we have to do this. Whether it's the medical industry or go down the line, the cell phones, the technology, it all comes from the minerals out of the ground. But since we have to do it, it also means we have to do it right. And I would much rather do it here in the United States, where we have the appropriate rules and regulations.
Absolutely.
I don't necessarily even have a problem with the rules and regulations. I have a problem with the efficiency at which the process occurs.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother conversation about how do you fix permitting. Again, it may not be the rules themselves. It shouldn't take 29 years on average to get a permit to build a mine.
I agree, that's embarrassing.
And to add to John's point, I mean, Arizona in the last 2 years has permitted 2 different copper mines in a 3-year time frame, all because it's on state and private lands. And you have Resolution Copper, sitting within 60 miles of one of those projects that's still stuck in permitting, and the only difference is one's on federal and one's on state. And so there is a way to do this at an efficient rate. We have states within the U.S. that are doing it, like Arizona, and we just got to get the federal government to get there.
And it can be done more efficiently while you still protect the environment.
Exactly, without
You're not
circumventing
giving anything up.
I think that's the biggest thing that I want to get across to people is we have to live in the world that we're currently in. People, if you're listening to this podcast, you couldn't listen to it if it would not be for mining. That microphone involves petroleum products. There's a battery in the microphone that I'm using right now. All of this stuff, it requires mining. And so when we are doing it here and you're able to do it responsibly, that's better for our environment overall. So I think that the importance of also raising awareness of permitting and how to do it. And I think that you touched on something really interesting, Ryan. The only difference between the mine that got permitted and the mine that's still working to get permitted is federal land.
Well, and also too, it's more important to know the state that it's in. You
Yeah.
know, is it is it a state that actually likes to do business? That's also a whole different topic. But
And that's probably one of the most unique things about mining compared to any other business in the world is most businesses can pick up and move to a friendly location.
Yeah.
In the mining industry, you got to
Yeah.
mine it where you find it. Wherever God put it, that's where you got to mine it.
Well, and I think I've heard this a lot today. The other thing, like we're here and we're near the Duluth complex, which is, you know, that largest discovered underground, what would you call it, vein area, like of what's available. It's the largest discovered. That's the other thing that people don't realize is how we need to be investing and looking into other options and future. It's like, it's not like we're going to run out of it tomorrow, you know, and we have to live in the way that we are living now. And to do this responsibly, as long as we can keep operating, we don't need to go into an apocalyptic chaos and figure out and learn new technology. Listen, nobody would have thought 40 years ago that we would be sitting here with cameras and microphones and having this conversation and putting it on this thing called the internet. Like nobody would have thought we'd be here. So we don't know where we'll be 30 years from now.
Well, and we're on the cusp of, I mean, over the last decade, it's been a lot about renewable energy, right?
Yeah.
Green and renewable energy. It takes a lot of metals for all those electric vehicles, right? The electric
Absolutely.
vehicle takes, 3 to 5 times as much copper, for example, to make an electric vehicle as a standard vehicle. Where's all that metal going to come from? The new one, kind of the next decade going forward, you start to hear a lot about chatter about this is AI, right?
Yeah.
So you have AI out there, and the energy requirements for AI are just astronomical. Well, you can't make power without metal, and so where's that metal going to come from? So, I mean, if you look, the demand in the future for all these metals, especially the critical minerals,
Yeah.
is just going to keep going up and up and up as this technology continues to develop.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and we need to bring it to our backyard in order to do it responsibly for a better, greener environment to take care of the future. So, John, thank you so much for sitting down and having this conversation with us. Thank you, Ryan, for inviting him and setting it up and having us be here. We really appreciate it.
No, thank you, and thank you to Ryan and Better in Our Backyard. It really is better in our backyard, and
It really,
you
truly
guys
is.
are doing an awesome job on it. So thank you.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely.